Hey guys, I'm here to talk to you about the selection tools in Photopea. So let's get started. So let's go to Photopea. And when I am using Photopea, I actually like to use the app version. So if you'd like to work with the app, you can go to More, Install Photopea, click Install here, and it just gives you a little more space to work in, and it makes it so that if you're using a Windows device, or I don't know how this works on other devices, but if I type in Photopea on my search option, it will pop up so that I can get to it more easily. Okay, so you can use this or the web version. It's up to you. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. So let's get started. I'm going to make a new project. I'm going to set this to inches. I'm going to make this 16 by 16. That's going to be the size of our first project. I usually recommend going to at 600, 300 DPI for print capability. Okay, now let me add a picture that I can make selections from. I will be using this ladybug today. And there we go. So the first thing you need to know is that when you are working with photographs in Photopea, sometimes you have to do this thing called rasterizing. I'm not going to get into the details of what rasterizing is right now, but if you see this little square in the bottom corner of your thumbnail on your layers, you want to right click on that and click rasterize, and that will make it fully editable in Photopea. Before I show you the selection tools, let me show you what selections even do, what they are. Okay, so I'm just going to use the rectangle select tool for an example. So if I select this, okay, what can I do with this now? Well, I can cut it and I can paste it. And now it is, you can see over here, it's its own layer. It's added another layer, and I can manipulate it. I can copy it and paste it. So I can copy and then I can paste. Okay. So now I've got two of those leaves if for some reason I needed two of them. Okay. And I can, let me go back. I can paint, and it will stay inside my selection like this. So it doesn't matter how much I go outside my selection, it's protected. So it's almost like masking tape. And I can also do the same thing with the eraser. So I can erase inside my selection and it won't go outside. Okay. So basically, if you create a selection, you're limited to working within that selection. Okay. And you can use it to cut and paste things. So we're going to be doing a lot of selecting to erase and selecting to cut and paste in our next project. So you saw the rectangular tool. Okay. If I make a new selection, if I make a new selection, it will replace the old one. Okay. There are ways to adjust to get around this, and I'll show those to you in a little while. If I make a rectangle and I hold the shift key, it will make a perfect square. So you can see how that's a perfect square. All right. To deselect, to eliminate the selection, I can do two things. I can go to select, deselect, or I can hit Command D on my keyboard. So make a selection and then Command D will deselect. Okay. So that's the rectangular marquee. Photoshop calls it the rectangular marquee. Photopea calls it the rectangle select. Ellipse select is exactly what you would think it is. You can make ellipses or ovals. Again, if I hold shift, it will make perfect circles. All right. I can move this into position if I want to. I can make a new one because this is not quite the right size that I want. Okay. So I can move this over this ladybug. And then if I wanted to, I could erase. Let me make my eraser bigger. I could erase, oops. I could erase inside this oval if I wanted to. Okay. the other thing is if I want to, I want to keep everything, I want to keep the ladybug and get rid of everything else. So when you do that, you can go to select the inverse. So now the ladybug is inside the oval. But see how we've added dotted lines around the outside of this, around this edge here? So now everything except the ladybug is selected. So I can hit delete. And now I only have to deal with this little section of ladybug, which might be more convenient if you're trying to get rid of big sections of things. Okay, so the marquee tools, or the rectangle and the oval select tools, in my opinion, are going to be mainly to do just like big areas that you have to get rid of all at once. But you may find many uses for them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate a lot of this stuff just to make our lives a little easier. So I'll select the inverse, hit the delete key to delete it, and now Command D to deselect, and now I can make my ladybug even bigger so I can sort of see all the details that I have to fiddle with on her. Okay, so that's the two sort of shape selection tools. Then we come down here to the lasso. The lasso allows you to just kind of free form draw. So I could kind of just cut that, I'll hit delete on that. So if I want to go around and sort of free form draw around this ladybug, I can just start chewing away at these different pieces that I want to get rid of. Okay, so sometimes you can think of the selection tools like scissors. Okay, like if you were going to cut out pictures from a magazine or something, and you wanted to cut up close to the edges, how would you do that? Okay, so the lasso tool is just kind of free form. Deselect. And then there's the polygonal lasso, and that one makes straight lines. So it's like a piece of string. So I'm just clicking and pulling that little string around. I could go around and select all this stuff to get rid of it. My goal here right now is to cut out just this ladybug. So I'm going to try to show you all the tools to cut out the ladybug. Okay, so I closed the shape. So now it's all selected, and then I can hit delete, and I got rid of all that stuff pretty quickly. All right, so I'm getting closer and closer to the edges of my ladybug. Up next is the magnetic lasso. Now, I'm not going to lie, the magnetic lasso can be a little laggy. So if finding things are being laggy, then just close out some stuff. I closed some things, and suddenly it's working. So I can kind of just sort of hover along this edge, and you can see the string, almost like that little string is finding the edge for me. Now, occasionally you have to click to tell it where to go. But if you just stay slow and steady and tell it where you want it to go, it kind of finds the edges of things for you. Now, it prefers to have edges that are nice and defined. Out here near the edge of this foot, this is going to get a little confused. Okay. Now, if I mess up and it selects something, oh, I went over here. Oh no, what do I do? I can kind of back up and see if it will join me, but it's not. See how it's making that extra little spur there? So I'll hit the backspace key until it goes back to where I want it. And then I can continue, okay? I'm going to cut this leg a little short so that I can finish this demo. Okay, so this is the magnetic lasso. We could go this way. I'm going to hit enter and see what happens. So if I just hit enter, it closed the shape for me. So now I've selected the edge of this leg. Okay. So that's the magnetic lasso. Okay. So that was the magnetic lasso. It's very, very laggy. If you're struggling with it, just move on. Okay. Okay, so up next is the quick selection tool. So we're going to talk about the quick selection tool, which is this guy here. You can use it to select areas, sort of like a paintbrush. So if the lasso tool works like a pair of scissors, this one works like a paintbrush to fill in areas. All right. So I'm going to go around and just paint this edge and get a, try to get a little closer to that ladybug. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So rather than make this a new layer, I'm going to click Selection and then click OK. And when it's done is it's selected that area. And then again, I can hit delete and I'm getting even closer to the edges of my ladybug. Okay. All right. You can, of course, just use the eraser for things, but that can be pretty frustrating in my opinion. All right, next one. The magic wand. Okay, here's how the magic wand works. Generally, you want to set a little bit of a feather. So I'm going to set the feather on 10 pixels. Okay. And I'm going to, the tolerance, I'll show you what the tolerance does in a moment. Right now it's set on 30. So I'm going to go to my magic wand. I'm going to make sure I'm on my ladybug layer. And I am going to, I want contiguous right now because all of my green stuff is connected. I'm going to click on here and let it see what it selects. So it selected all this green stuff that it thinks is all the same. And you can do this a couple of ways. I could hold the Shift key and add to my selection. So it's adding on to it. So Shift adds to selection, and Alt, the Alt key removes the selection. On a Mac, it's the Option key. Okay, so I can add on to my selection. I'm going to delete those. All right, and I still got some green here. The tolerance, if you set it at a low tolerance, it is more picky about the colors it chooses. And if you set it to a high tolerance, let me undo and see the difference. If you set it to a high tolerance, it's like, oh, green in general is fine, okay? Which in this case is probably okay because it's mostly green around my ladybug. So let me undo what I just did, all of my erasing. Go back up here. Okay, so this is where I started. Let me set the tolerance to 70. Okay, so when I start clicking now, you might see that it starts to select more. It's getting a little more aggressive about what it selects, and it went in here to this red zone. So 70 is probably a bit much. So you kind of have to play around with the tolerance to figure out what is going to work for what you're doing, okay? And also know that you can always select something and then delete it and then keep selecting other things and delete them. So if I delete this, it kept most of what I wanted. I don't think it got rid of anything I didn't want. Okay, so now I can deselect. So I'm getting closer and closer to the edges of my ladybug. All right, object selection. This one is also a little bit laggy. Anything that says image analysis is often a little bit laggy. So I'm just selecting, yeah, this one I don't have a ton of luck with. Yeah, it basically tries to pick things out for you. So I'm just clicking and dragging and making rectangles, and it's choosing what to select, which is fine if what you're selecting is a pretty normal shape, but this ladybug, it's not a good option. Let's try this, see what happens. So it kind of got some things that, it just picked out the object on that white background, which is not super helpful. So you can play around with the object selection tool. Okay, so those are the tools on the toolbar. All right. A couple other things I would like to show you. The select. You can try. I do select color range a lot. And that's going to open in a different window here. So I need to get rid of some green stuff. Okay. So what I can do is click on the green stuff. I might have to click in the, there it goes. So I'm clicking on green. I can adjust the fuzziness. Let's put it at 60 and see what happens. And I can hold the Shift key and add on to the green. And you can see in this preview, you can see where it's selecting things that are green. And I can just hold Shift and keep adding on to my click, and it's selecting that same, anywhere that shade of green pops up, it's selecting it for me. Okay. I want to add on to it. So I'm just clicking on the different shades of green to try to get the program to recognize And I'm holding the shift key. Pretty important to hold that shift key. Okay, click OK. Now it's selected those things. Now I can delete those. I'm even closer to the edges of my ladybug. All right. From this point, you can, I think I showed you how to select the inverse, but let me show you again, just so that we're all clear. This is pretty good. I'm getting pretty close to the edges of that ladybug, and that's an okay selection. Not great, but for a beginner, it's pretty good. So I can also select the inverse of things. So let's say I'm going to I'll use the magic wand. I also want to show you not contiguous. So I'm going to uncheck this, and I'm going to select this black spot. And you see how it selected all these other black spots? Because they are not contiguous, meaning they're not touching each other. So it figured I wanted to select all the stuff that was that color of black. So it selected all those black things. So that's a good thing to use. Now, if I want to select everything but the black, I can select the inverse, and now I've selected everything else, and I could delete my ladybug, and now it's just spots, which I obviously don't want to do, but you get the idea. Okay, if I go back, select inverse again, and then I delete, you can see now I've selected all the black, or deleted all the black. Okay, all right, undo all that, deselect. There is also the magic cut tool, which is kind of fun to play around with if you need it. I might need to pick a different picture for the magic cut. Okay, so it did a lot of the work for me. It kind of is figuring out what I want for me. So if I swipe green over this area, and I don't need to fully fill it in, I'm just going to swipe over it and see what it does. So I'm going to stop right there. And oh, it figured it out for me. I don't want this background shadow or this shadow over here. So I'm going to swipe red over here. And I'm being cautious because it's being very laggy on me. Okay, did it okay. Let me swipe this over. Click that guy out. Make my brush smaller, that might help. And swipe there. Cool. It's chewing away at some things I don't want it to, but I'm going to stick to the red for now. I'm going to swipe over here. Again, I'm just going slow because it's being kind of laggy on me. Whoops. All right, I went too far, so let's go back to my green. And swipe this down here. It's probably being extra laggy because I am recording at the same time as I am working. You can see I'm just swiping those green lines over it as if to say, go. And it's finding the shape that I want for me pretty well. Again, it needs might need a little help, and I'm actually going to show you how to adjust that in a second as well. Okay. Oh, I'm on red. No, I'm on green. Good. Okay. So that's an okay cutout. It's got some rough edges, but let's show you how to fix that. So this was the magic cut. Now, right now, if I click OK, it's going to make this a new layer. I wanted to make it a selection. I'm going to click OK. Okay. So you can see my selection here is it's a little rough in places. I can click Refine Edge. Okay, and I can make my brush smaller. So you want to kind of think of this in 3 ways, okay? White, black, and gray. The gray is going to be kind of the middle zone between the white and the black. It'll kind of create some fuzziness around that edge. So I want to add my gray here. So around the edge of my object that I am cutting out, I want to add that gray. Ooh, missed a spot. Okay. And Okay, so I'm adding the gray there. Letting it load, letting it think. Okay, and that edge looks a little more real. I might need to go right here. Okay. So white, it will keep anything you paint white. So if I've got some zones here in the middle that are getting a little funky, I can paint over them with the white. Much better. Now it looks much more solid. So let's fill this in with the white. That shouldn't be cut out. There we go. That fixed that. Okay. And then black will erase things that you don't want. Okay, so if you need to go around and do any erasing in any zones, so like I don't want this shadow here. Okay, so black will cover things up. Okay, that's going to look pretty rough because I couldn't make a straight line. There it goes. Okay, that looks a little rough because I didn't make a very good straight line. But you kind of get the drift. Okay, you can adjust the border size and make it larger if you want, or smaller. It's up to you. You can also adjust the brush size. Okay, click OK. And should adjust my selection here. Didn't already. And then I can hit select the inverse and delete. Oh, rasterize first. Rasterize. And then delete. And then it did a pretty good job of finding that edge for me. So it all depends on whether you want to let the computer make decisions for you, or if you want to do it by hand. Those are kind of your two options. Okay, you can use all these tools to let me try that. So you can also, once you have something selected, you can go to transform selection and you can make it larger or smaller if you need to. In my opinion, that doesn't come up too often, but it's there. All right, folks, I realized after I finished that last section of the video that I forgot a couple of things, so I need to go over them with you quickly. I need to talk to you about adding and subtracting and combining selections, okay? So I am going to work with this hand right here, and here's how this works. So let's say I start, let me deselect this and I'll show you. So let's say I start with a selection. Okay? And this is just for the auto select options. And this did a pretty good job of selecting the edge for me, but it missed some spots here. So I need to add on to that. All right, so how do I do that? I can go to the, let's do this with the Lasso Tool, okay? I can go to that lasso. If I hold the Shift key, I can add to, you'll see this icon change up here. If I hold the Shift key, you'll see it's, I'm going to add on to the selection. Okay, so we're going to add on. So if I hold Shift and then just kind of go up here, I'm just kind of doing this freehand. And then I'm going to circle back to the beginning. Now it has added that section for me, okay? If it selects something I didn't mean to select, so I'll do this one. And whoa, I went crazy. Someone knocked my mouse, my cat ran over the keyboard, whatever it is. So now I've got a thing here that I don't want. To subtract from the selection, I hold the Alt or Option key, depending on if you're on a PC or a Mac. And I can click this, I'm going to circle it, and it will remove it. Okay, so Shift to add to the selection, Alt Option to remove from the selection. Okay, you can also use these tools up here. So if this is add, okay, this one is going to be subtract, and then there's this one where they kind of crisscross over each other. So if I do this, oops, that's not what I meant. I want this one. Okay, and now where they overlap, that's what it has selected. All right. So these are the different selection options. The different selection tools may give you different options up here. Quick selection, yeah, here we go. The quick selection tool gives you just add and subtract, and you in this mode. Okay. But the big one is Shift to add on, Alt to subtract. Okay. And those are the big ones you need to keep in mind. Okay. And you can add extras, that don't touch either. Okay. So Shift to add and Alt to subtract. Okay. I hope that's helpful, and thanks for watching.